What's up, Tailgaters? You're in the booth with Tailgate Nate today. Welcome to my channel, and the 12-team college football playoff field is down to its final two. The national championship on January 20th in Atlanta is set. But before we give you a little mini preview, talk about some of the narratives surrounding the national championship game and stuff of that nature, we have to understand how each team punched its ticket to the national championship game. This is your college football playoff bracket update and your semifinal recap. We got two absolute classics in the Orange Bowl and in the Goodyear Cotton Bowl Classic. Let's break them all down. Let's talk about them. We will dive on into, again, a little mini national championship preview, but watch out for the big national championship preview and prediction to come out later on this week within the next 3 or 4 days. I'm thinking Tuesday or Wednesday. It's Saturday as of sitting down and recording this video, but I'll keep you guys posted on both Twitter or X, whatever you prefer to call it, and the YouTube community tab right here on this platform. And speaking of those two things, I just want to say thank you for all the support that this channel got in 2024. I want to see that same support and even more of it in 2025. So please help support me, help support the channel in any way that you possibly can. And if the only thing you do is you sit down, you watch this video, and you move on with your day, that still helps support me in many more ways than you can even imagine. But if you want to do more, biggest way outside of watching this video is hitting that red subscribe button and ringing the bell so you get notified of when I upload, especially if you've watched my videos before and still haven't done it. Really encourage you to do it. We put out a lot of content here. I'm going to start putting out a lot more content here in the calendar year of 2025. And you can also interact with the channel in any other way outside of what I've already said, and it's going to help support the channel, whether that's liking, commenting, sharing, all helps to support me. And if you want to support me outside of this platform, go give me a follow on Twitter, go give me a follow on Instagram. It's at TailgateNate29. Gonna start posting a lot more. My New Year's resolution in 2025, post a lot more on social media so you people can not only stay up to date on what I do on YouTube, but also see what I do outside of YouTube, such as calling games, writing articles, and so much more. I would really appreciate if you check out everything else I do in the sports media realm. In a more professional setting, you can go give me a follow on LinkedIn. But with all that said and done and out of the way, let's start previewing these reviewing these national semifinal games after a quick water break. If you like it, it's nice and big. I got it for Christmas. Make sure you stay hydrated. Anyways, let's go ahead and get on in to talking about these semifinal games. And we're going to start with the game that happened on Thursday. We're going to start with the Capital One Orange Bowl, Notre Dame and Penn State. And this, a little bit more high scoring than what I expected by a touchdown for each team. My score prediction was 20-17, and it ended up so happened being that it was 27-24. The Notre Dame Fighting Irish come away with the win. And again, just a touchdown more than what I thought each team was going to get. So a little bit more high scoring than I thought. There were a couple of mistakes that I will touch on here for Penn State that really cost them this game. But again, we're going to dive on in and break all of that down. Before I actually start breaking down these semifinal games, I am in a hotel room right now, as you can see, just on the road, traveling back to college and such. So if the acoustics or sound or sort of the just overall look of the video isn't necessarily up to par with some of my other content, I apologize. Kind of making the best of what I got for right now. Once I get back up to my college and set things back up, it'll look a lot cleaner. I'll have my green screen back and all of that fun stuff. But okay, I'm not going to waste any more time. Notre Dame, the 27-24 win over the Penn State Nittany Lions. Now, coming into this game, whichever team ran the football better was probably going to have a really good chance to win the game. Whichever team won the battle at the line of scrimmage between two really good offensive lines and two physical defenses, especially in those defensive fronts, was going to have a good chance to win the game. Well, let me read you those stat lines, and then we'll tell you how the game ended up playing out. Penn State had 204 rushing yards in this game. Notre Dame only 116. You're seeing the Notre Dame logo there, though, in the national championship, not Penn State. Let's take a look at what each defense was able to do. Notre Dame, only 1 sack, 2 tackles for loss. That was it. Penn State, 5 sacks, and 8 tackles for loss. Okay, so Penn State won both the offensive line of scrimmage by allowing their run game to do a whole lot more than Notre Dame. They won the defensive line of scrimmage because they were able to create a lot more pressure, a lot more negative plays. Where did it go wrong for Penn State? Well, I'll talk about that here, but I want to talk about the Notre Dame side of things a little bit first, and then we'll dive on into some of the mistakes that Penn State made. Notre Dame just never backed down. They always showed fight. And this is a Notre Dame team that I had told people all year long, especially now that we've gotten on into the college football playoff, do not sleep on the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. Yes, they have the worst loss out of anyone that entered this 12-team field, possibly the worst loss out of any top 25 team, or maybe the worst loss if you're looking at what the team that lost is compared to the team that beat them in the college football season this year, to Northern Illinois. It's the biggest upset that Northern Illinois has seen, and in a normal four-team year, Notre Dame probably does not make the Final Four, but they did here, and I kept telling people, man, this is a Notre Dame team that fights. They are very well coached. Riley Leonard is a gamer. They have a great group of backs, an underrated group of wide receivers. And when you just look at Notre Dame, sure, their offensive line got a little bit beaten and battered by Abdul Carter, who was massive for Penn State in this game, by the way. And they got a little bit torched on the ground by Katron Allen and Nick Singleton. Their secondary played great. Riley Leonard is a gamer. We're going to talk about him a lot more here in just a little bit, but also when you take a look at Notre Dame, there really is no one true weak link. The run defense pretty strong, the secondary pretty strong. Riley Leonard can throw the ball really well. We saw that on display in this game against Penn State. He can run the ball. We know Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price are two really good backs. They have great play on the line of scrimmage. And even though the stats might not tell you it, there were points in this game where Notre Dame was winning the battle on the line of scrimmage, especially in the middle part of this game, specifically the end of the second quarter. Throughout that, most of that third quarter into the fourth, Penn State started to take control, but then the mistakes piled up for Penn State. So let's just go ahead and fast forward all the way to the end of the game. We'll do a little mini recap here. Penn State got up 10-0, and it just looked like the Nittany Lions were about to put a beat down because they were doing what the stat sheet tells you they did throughout the entire game. They were winning the battle on the line of scrimmage. They were running the football better. They were getting pressure to Riley Leonard. This Notre Dame offense could do nothing, but they get a field goal to end the half, to build momentum. They get the ball to start. Riley Leonard takes his team down the field. They tie the game up, and then Notre Dame takes the lead. 17-10 in the very first minute of that fourth quarter. And at that moment, you got to be thinking, the tides are just completely swung, and you're thinking Notre Dame, as I say, you're thinking this if you are a Penn State fan, heads on hand going, what the heck is happening? Because the tides are shifting. Notre Dame is starting to win the battle on the line of scrimmage, but Penn State did what they have done in some points this season, and did what they had to do here, which was respond. They ended up responding with a 7-play, 75-yard drive. The very next drive after Notre Dame scored, very first play of the ensuing drive for Notre Dame, Riley Leonard throws a pick. Danny Dennis Sutton, the big man up front, able to take advantage of it. And then 5 plays later, about 2.5 minutes, Penn State is back on top. They are back in the end zone, and things are starting to look bleak for Notre Dame because now there is no more momentum. Well, okay, Notre Dame drives down the field, 7 plays, 81 yards. Riley Leonard made some huge throws here, made some absolutely huge plays, and the Jaden Greathouse touchdown. That's where this all started for Penn State. I don't know what happened, and I couldn't tell you who the defensive back was. The name is escaping my mind, but the defensive back that was guarding Jaden Greathouse on that 54-yard touchdown that ended up tying the football game for Notre Dame with about 4 minutes left just fell. He fell down, and at that point, as soon as you see it live, you're thinking, how is Jaden Greathouse that wide open? That has to be a coverage bust. When you go back and you look at the replay, it is as simple as the defender fell down. One mistake can cost you a whole lot in a college football playoff setting, and it ended up costing Penn State a lot there because that's the game-tying touchdown, but it's okay. Penn State has got room to work. They still got time left. They go 3 and out. They punt the football away. Penn State's defense does its job. They make Notre Dame punt the football away, and at this point, there is only around 40 seconds left. Now, what do you do if you are Penn State? Well, they do what most teams do. They run a draw play or a screen or something of that nature just to kind of feel things out, right? Just to kind of say, okay, how aggressive can we be here? Because while hindsight is 2020, that play popped. It was Nick Singleton going for 13 yards, and whenever you get a first down on that play, whether it's a draw, a screen pass, a counter, whatever it is, it gives you some momentum, and it gives you some life. And so Penn State figured, okay, it's time to be aggressive here. But the one cardinal rule that you cannot do as a quarterback is throw late over the middle. If you throw late towards the boundaries, worst case scenario, it still could end in an interception, but more likely than not, you're either going to dirt it or you're going to throw it out of bounds. You're throwing it towards the boundary. If you throw it late over the middle, you're asking for trouble. That's where all the cluster is. That's where all the defensive backs are. I see people flaming Drew Aller for this. And Drew Aller was an absolute champion in that press conference, not only for showing up, because that is really, really hard to do after a game like that, to show up and say, yeah, man, that's my bad. He took a bullet to where I don't think he deserves the full blame for it. Was it his mistake throwing late over the middle with pressure in his face? Yes. And he was saying he was just trying to dirt the ball, but his wide receiver did not do him any help. I think it was Amari Evans that ended up being his receiver and just did not run a great route. My opinion, did not run a great route, and that allowed Christian Gray to come right over the top to seal off that wide receiver perfectly, to seal Evans off perfectly, to pick that ball off, and that ended up being the dagger for Penn State, because what did Riley Leonard do? He ran the ball. He found Jaden Greathouse, who made some really, really good plays here in this game, just setting Mitch Jeter up for where he wanted it, and the 41-yard field goal is good, which, I mean, is a very poetic way for Notre Dame to end that game. Not only was this the worst kicking Power 4 / independent team in the regular season, Notre Dame has had some special team struggles throughout the season, especially with their kicking game and with Mitch Jeter. He's been fantastic all college football playoffs. He has stepped up when it's mattered, and believe it or not, that is the first ever successful field goal attempt in a college football playoff setting where a team is either trying to tie the game or win the game in the fourth quarter. That is the first ever field goal kick of that nature that we have had, and it sends Notre Dame to a national championship game. I feel for Drew Aller and Penn State, man. I was talking amongst some buddies before this game, but also years ago when Drew Aller signed and Nick Singleton signed and Katron Allen signed, and I said, hey man, 2024 is the year for Penn State. It was this close. Drew Aller probably is going to come back next year. Who knows what's going to happen with Singleton and Allen? Some of those guys lose. But the thing that separated Penn State here, I think Notre Dame's got a very underrated wide receiver group. The thing that separated Penn State here was their talent on the outside. They did not have a completed pass to a wide receiver. Your leading wide receivers, in fact, the only pass catchers that caught balls from Drew Aller was Tyler Warren, who was still immaculate, had himself a pretty decent game, maybe not one that maybe Penn State would have liked to use them a little bit more, but then running backs and tight ends, no completed catches to wide receivers in that game, and that is the issue for Penn State, and they have to address it somehow. They tried to address it in the portal this previous cycle. It didn't work. After they lost Keandre Lambert-Smith, you could tell wide receiver was going to be an issue for Penn State, and I definitely think it cost them here, because if Penn State has that elite talent on the outside, I think we're talking about an all Big Ten championship game, knowing the way that Ohio State and Texas played out. So 2 huge mistakes. And I don't even know if the defensive back falling down is, well, yes, okay. It's a mistake, but it's very, very unfortunate. But then a handful of mistakes on that one play. Bad route by the wide receiver, bad decision by Drew Aller. Notre Dame picks it off, and they are in the national championship game. By the way, Marcus Freeman, first ever black head coach that will be, I think, even coaching in a national championship game. Heck, he could be the first black head coach to go win the thing. I love Marcus Freeman. I love what he's about, and I know people like to hate on Notre Dame, and I know people have hated on Notre Dame all season this year, especially after what happened in the game against Northern Illinois in week 2 of the college football season. I couldn't be happier for him. I couldn't be happier for his team. I love what he's about. Riley Leonard is a gamer. He stepped up in some of the biggest moments, not only in that Georgia game, but in this Penn State game too, finding receivers, making plays. I couldn't think of a more fitting team from that right side of the bracket to go play for a national championship game. Now let's talk about the left side of the bracket, the loaded side of the bracket, if you will. And in the Goodyear Cotton Bowl Classic, it was a de facto home game for the Texas Longhorns, who needed every fight and fiber to get past Arizona State. And they ran into what, for the first 2 games of the college football playoffs, had been a buzzsaw. The Ohio State Buckeyes were in buzzsaw mode. They ran through Tennessee. They ran through Oregon. And a lot of people thought they were going to run through Texas too. Now, I didn't necessarily see it that way, but I kind of figured if Ohio State was going to play up to that level, that no one was just going to beat them. They did not play up to that level. How do I necessarily want to phrase this? I don't want to discredit Ohio State, because I still think they played a really good game. Could they have played better? I mean, yeah, absolutely. Look at the way they played Tennessee and Oregon. They definitely could have played Texas they definitely could have played Texas a whole lot better. They definitely could have played better overall as a team. But both of these teams, I still think, played really, really good. And Ohio State and Texas both played really, really good. And Ohio State goes and scores that touchdown on their opening drive. Will Howard is throwing passes into all these tight windows. You're thinking, how the hell are these wide receivers catching the ball? Jeremiah Smith isn't really getting the ball, but you don't really care because you see Will Howard just donut hole, fitting it into these really, really tight spaces the size of a pin needle, and you're just thinking, Ohio State is at it again. They can do absolutely no wrong. What is it going to take to beat this team? Quinshaw Judkins on pure fight pounds it in to the end zone, and I think a lot of college football fans around the nation went, oh boy, here we go. Ohio State, the buzzsaw, it's happening. Texas is about to get run over, and then it just didn't really pan out that way. Now, I do think there were a couple things that changed the momentum in Texas's favor. And the most important one being that TreVeyon Henderson personal foul. You just can't do that. And TreVeyon Henderson is probably the last guy on that football field that you would expect to get an unsportsmanlike conduct penalty. The Texas defensive lineman probably said something to him. You know you're going to get jawing back and forth. This is the college football playoffs. This is the game of football. You know guys are going to talk their talk on the field. TreVeyon Henderson took exception to it, or maybe the guy didn't say anything at all. Maybe that's TreVeyon Henderson just being uncharacteristic, which is exactly what it was. That pushed the Buckeyes back 15 yards. Penalties happen to be a theme of the day for the Buckeyes in that game, and we'll talk more about that later. But, I mean, really, Ohio State just couldn't get anything going because they were driving. That was their second drive of the game. They were driving, and ever since then, just seemed like the offense couldn't really get it together. Now, holding penalties and things of that nature did hold them back, and the Buckeye defense was doing their part. They were holding Texas to not really allowing them to do much either, and then Texas goes down the field and scores. Jaden Blue on the wheel route, just a nice over-the-top throw from Quinn Ewers, and this game is tied, which felt massive because there was 29 seconds left, and the Texas fans, a probably more pro-Texas crowd than Ohio State crowd, even though there was a lot of scarlet in the AT&T Stadium. The Burnt Orange showed up well, and well, the tie game only lasted for one play because, again, you go back to what I said earlier, teams can feel out how aggressive they want to be with a screen pass, a draw play, an easy run, things of that nature. And if it pops, then they say, okay, we can build off this. Let's go. TreVeyon Henderson is one of many guys on that Ohio State offensive side that when he has the ball in his hands, he can go the distance from anywhere on the football field. Now, Texas sends, I believe, a corner blitz from the side that TreVeyon Henderson gets the screen pass on, and you just can't do that. You cannot get blitz happy when a team is trying to figure out how aggressive they want to be, and the offensive line, Will Howard's getting pressured. He just flips it out to TreVeyon Henderson. 3, maybe 4, but I'm pretty sure 3 offensive linemen had a running start, and TreVeyon Henderson hits that gap. Zoom. He's gone. 75 yards to the house, and the Buckeyes get back on top and get the ball to start the second half. I had a couple buddies that texted me during there and say after that TreVeyon Henderson touchdown that game was over, because at that point the fire was back with OSU, and they didn't think Texas was going to get it back. Well, the Buckeyes didn't really do anything on their first drive of the second half. They actually threw a pick. Jeremiah Smith, Texas did a phenomenal job at defending him, and they did it playing zone. They just couldn't get the ball to number 4. Finally, Will Howard sees an opportunity. He tries to fit it in, and Texas disguises it perfectly. It's exactly what I said in my preview video. Texas was going to do some things defensively to force Will Howard into picks. He telegraphed it. He stared down Jeremiah Smith for way too long. The Texas defensive scheme was perfect, and they ended up to get that pick there. It was David Benda that ended up getting that interception. He made some really big plays for Texas there down the stretch. But moving on past that, it took a couple drives, but Texas was able to get into the end zone. It was Jaden Blue again, bust in coverage. Wide open, easy touchdown, and this game is tied at 14. It didn't last long, though. After a couple punts from each side, the Ohio State defense stepping up. Ohio State goes 13 plays, 88 yards, 7 minutes and 45 seconds. They really worked the clock on this drive, and they worked it to them in their favor. In that fourth quarter, they ran down almost half the time there. Quinshon Judkins able to punch it in. Will Howard still trying to complete some plays, and the Will Howard run. I mean, the Chip Kelly was in his bag in the second half. That Will Howard run, masterful. On 4th and 2, he hadn't ran all game long. Jeremiah Smith had been a non-factor. It's 4th and 2. It's the perfect time to do it, and Will Howard could have had a touchdown if the turf monster didn't trip him up, but it didn't really matter. Couple plays later, Quinshon Judkins on 2nd and goal gets his second touchdown, and the Buckeyes are back on top. But Texas had been responding all game long. Maybe it had taken them a minute, but they had been responding, and especially on that previous touchdown drive, Ohio State had done a very good job at stopping Texas on 3rd down. Texas built up a lot of momentum. I think on that touchdown drive that tied it at 14, they were 4 of 4, 5 of 5, something like that on 3rd down. They were perfect. They were building momentum, and they were doing the same thing on this drive. They were going down the field. Matthew Golden making some big plays. Quinn Ewers making some big-time throws. Gunnar Helm got one loose, and yeah, there was the pointing taunt penalty, which I think is stupid. I mean, who cares if you point at a guy? Officials clearly don't like it. I have no problem with it, but by the letter of the law, I don't mind the flag coming out, but I do mind that we're pulling the flags for things like that. But by the nature of the way the game has been called, and I mean, yeah, that one doesn't really have much discussion. Just don't point at a guy. I mean, he did put Caleb Downs on the floor, but don't point at a guy, I guess. I don't know. Just thought I'd throw my 2 cents in there. Anyway, that happened. He got loose. Matthew Golden got loose. He was wide open. And then the pass interference penalties started to stockpile. 3rd and goal at the 6, trying to find Ryan Wingo in the back of the end zone. Quinn Ewers knew if he threw the ball in that area, he was going to get pass interference, and he did. 1st and goal at the 2, pass interference. 1st and goal at the 1. I am not one to question play calling, but I will question this. You have 1st and goal at the 1. Ohio State has been a very good team all season long at defending inside the red zone, especially goal line stands. They did it against Oregon to force a field goal to give Ohio State a chance late in the game in Eugene in the first meeting between the Bucks and Ducks. They did it against Nebraska to avoid an upset on 4th and goal from, I think, the 1.5, maybe if not the 1, maybe even inside the 1. They did it against Penn State to seal that game. No one in big-time moments have been able to score on Ohio State at least a touchdown, which is what Texas needed to tie that game up in big moments late in games. Sark saw that. 1st and goal. They try it. Nothing. They get stuffed. So then comes the pitch play on 2nd down and goal. And I get where the pitch play is coming from. I know everyone's going to look and say, that's a terrible play call. Why would you run a pitch? You're setting yourself up for failure. In Sark's mind, it's high risk, high reward. And really, in anybody's mind, that play would be high risk, high reward with that scenario, but you have to do it. You got nothing on 1st and goal. This is a defense that thrives on goal line stands. So you throw that pitch play out there, hoping that you're going to have blockers. Nope. Caleb Downs, Lathan Ransom, they set the edge, and there are 5 Buckeyes waiting for Quintravion Wisner, and that is a loss of 7. And again, going back to my buddies texting me during the game while I'm screaming my head off, proud Buckeye fan here, by the way, as seen by the Ohio hat. As I'm screaming my head off, they're texting me, yeah, this game is over. And I was like, oh, well, wait. Quinn Ewers is a good quarterback, and he's going to find some things. So, okay, 3rd and goal, incomplete pass. It got tipped at the line, and here we go. As Chris Fowler said, not quite do or die, but it's very, very close. You got 2 minutes, 29 seconds left, and they were roommates. I know, I feel like a lot of people have been using that line with us lately, but Jack Sawyer, what a college football playoff, really what a season he's had, but especially in the playoffs, stepping up, making big plays, deflecting passes. It makes a play that will live in Buckeye infamy, in college football playoff infamy, hell, in college football infamy, period. Strip sack, 82 yards, return to the house, one of the greatest plays in college football playoff history, puts the stamp on this game for the Ohio State Buckeyes. They will face the Notre Dame Fighting Irish in the national championship. Quick thoughts here. We'll talk about Ohio State. We'll talk about Notre Dame a little bit later on in this video, as well as we'll dive fully in when the national championship preview of mine comes out. Again, I'm thinking Tuesday or Wednesday, which would be, 3 or 4 days as of recording this video. Just stay posted on my socials. You guys will know when it gets uploaded. Quinn Ewers is going to get a lot of flack for what happened, because Quinn Ewers, there were points where, and it really wasn't even just throughout that game. It was in the Arizona State game. It was in the Clemson game. It was throughout points this entire season where he just didn't look great. And you knew as soon as that ball got sacked, or as soon as that clock hit triple digits, the Arch Manning era has started. Now, Quinn Ewers himself has said he doesn't think he's playing any more college football, but if he does, it's not going to be with Texas, because they are going to go all in on Arch Manning. And we kind of saw that a little bit this year with them utilizing Arch Manning in a lot of different ways. And I'm honestly very surprised that they didn't utilize him more in this game. They utilized him on a 1 4th down scenario. And I thought that was Sark being really smart. You know what I thought also would have been pretty smart on that 2nd and goal? Instead of running that high risk, high reward pitch play, you have 3 more downs to work with. Put in Arch Manning, throw in that wrinkle in there, and try to punch it into the end zone again. Again, hindsight is 2020. Sark is one of the most masterful, if not the most masterful play caller that we have across our country, so I'm going to shut up. But I mean, you just got to wonder, and everything is going to race through your mind what they were thinking. I know what they were thinking. High risk, high reward. We're not going to get through the teeth of that defense. No one's been able to all year. Let's try it, and it just didn't work. Quinn Ewers is going to catch a lot of flack. A lot of it I feel like is deserved. Some of it I feel like is undeserved, because I think he's a really good quarterback. If he comes back to college and plays one more year, it's definitely not going to be in Burt Orange. It's not going to be in Austin for Texas, his dream school. It's going to be for someone else. And I think he's going to show what he's made of. I think even when he goes to the NFL, sure, it might take him a little time to settle in, find his place to get a starting role. I think he can be a pretty good quarterback. I think Quinn Ewers this year might not have been fully healthy. Maybe there were some other things that happened with Quinn Ewers, but this is the 2nd time now that Texas has failed in a college football playoff semifinal game. I love Sark. I love the job he's doing. And this Texas team might very well be the national championship favorite when you take a look ahead to next season, because that defense played amazing, as did that Buckeye defense. But I'm going to give my flowers to the losing side here for a second. What a season for Texas. I love everything that Sarkisian is building in Austin. Texas is going to come back to this point, and they might even make a national championship next year. But Ohio State and Notre Dame, that is your national championship game. And let's just talk for a little bit about how we got here. So in a normal 4-team playoff year, these are definitely not the two teams that we're getting in the college football playoff national championship game, right? In a normal 4-team year, I mean, I couldn't even point out the 4 teams that would have made it from this year, because there were a lot of teams with 2 losses, a lot of teams with 1 loss that never played for a conference championship game, things of that nature. Oregon would probably definitely be the only lock, and then you'd have to discuss from there. But this just kind of feels like maybe not the national championship that people wanted or that people predicted. Maybe it's the national championship people need, because you see in the NFL all the time, and I don't mean to compare the two sports, because the Saturday product is very, very different from the Sunday product, and that's a conversation for another day. Definitely a video that I will be making this off season, as a lot of people talk about the professionalizing of college football, but I digress. Can't even remember where I was going with that. Oh, yes, I do. You see teams in the NFL all the time stumble and trip, and then they pick themselves back up, they make adjustments, and then they go. And some of them win the Super Bowl. And in college football this year, Ohio State tripped, and they fell and they tumbled twice. They fell to the consensus number 1 team in the country on the road by 1 point, by a matter of 1 second. And Notre Dame has the worst loss in the country this year, arguably, to Northern Illinois. Both of those teams fell. Oh, and then of course Ohio State has that loss to Michigan that to a lot of people is just inexplainable, inexcusable. We've crossed that now. Both of these teams stumbled, but they picked themselves back up, and they've gotten here. And my college football playoff bracket has been perfect. Maybe not since the preseason, because I did have Oregon beating Ohio State and that sort of thing, and Oregon making the national championship. But as far as going round by round with my predictions, this is exactly what I expected to happen. I think Ohio State and Notre Dame, besides Oregon and Texas, these are 2 of the top 4 teams in the country, and I'm throwing Oregon and Texas in that mix there. Ohio State and Notre Dame are 2 of the top 4 teams in the country. If not, you can make the argument that they are 2 of the top 3 talent-wise. Oregon just had to run into a buzzsaw at Ohio State in the Rose Bowl when they were cruising. But both of these 2 teams have earned their way here. Both of them ran through very, very tough opponents, and we can get into the whole conversation in a later video, probably a video that will come out within the next coming days, that is this the most, maybe not legitimate, but toughest national championship to win because of the path and the number of games and all the different things that teams had to take. Again, not going to answer that here. It's a rhetorical question for this video. We'll answer it in a different video coming out here as we're sort of previewing the national championship. But this game, I think, is going to be electric. You got 2 hard-hitting defenses. You got 2 quarterbacks that are going to be very, very overlooked. They might not go the highest in the NFL draft. Heck, if they get drafted at all, Riley Leonard probably will. Who knows if Will Howard, well, he probably will declare. Who knows if he goes in any one of those rounds? I think he does. I think both those quarterbacks are going to get drafted, but they're not like consensus first-round picks here or any of that. Both teams are really, really good defensively, especially in that front 4, but the back end for both of these teams are exceptional. The Ohio State secondary, the Notre Dame secondary, they are flawless. I think that might be the matchup to help decide that game, especially when you talk about Ohio State's wide receiver group against Notre Dame's defensive back group. They don't have Benjamin Morrison. He was injured. He was hurt, but Xavier Watts came back, played really, really well. You had Gray that made that pick to help Notre Dame win that game late. That secondary is just flawless, and Notre Dame has seen the film now. They know how to shut number 4 down, and Texas did it with zone coverage. Notre Dame plays a lot of man-to-man. Maybe they change their philosophies in play zone, or maybe they're confident in their guys versus your guys, and they're going to play man. They're going to go one-on-one with Jeremiah Smith, and maybe they win that battle. Who knows? I mean, Jeremiah Smith told Oregon, I dare you to play man, and he beat him and made him pay. So So if Notre Dame plays man, maybe Jeremiah Smith is looking to put up a stat line that's more accustomed to his Rose Bowl numbers than his Cotton Bowl numbers, which were only 1 catch for 3 yards. But Emeka Egbuka, Carnell Tate, you got other guys to worry about. Travion Henderson, Quinshaw Judkins for Notre Dame. Jaden Greathouse made some big plays. Bo Collins wasn't really a huge factor, but he still is a great playmaker. Riley Leonard is an absolute gamer, man, and he's got Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price in that backfield, 2 really, really good backs. I think this is going to be an absolute brawl. I think this is going to be such a fun national championship, and for a year where every team in the country, maybe besides Oregon because they finished the regular season undefeated with a Big Ten championship, every team in the college football playoff field and every team across the nation stumbled. They fell. They did not play their best football in a game that mattered big time. And in a year where 4 teams would have killed them, in 12 teams they create new life. And I think it just adds so much more to college football. The 12-team playoff is doing exactly what it was intended to do. And yeah, we can worry about the seeding and some of the more finer details later. But for right now, we got to focus on January 20th because I think this is going to be a phenomenal national championship game. Ohio State and Notre Dame. This game is going to, as the kids say nowadays, feed families. This is going to be an exceptional game. It is going to be... I've probably said already for about a minute how good I think this game is going to be. But I think I'm going to go ahead and leave this video here. Gave you a little short preview of the national championship. You got your semifinals reviewed. This is just, this college football playoff, I know it didn't start out the greatest. I know we got a lot of very far apart games on the scoreboard there in that first round, and some of the second round games weren't necessarily what we all thought we hoped that they would be, but those semifinal games were absolute classics, and I think we're about to get a classic in the national championship. By the way, before we end this video, one final thing I do want to talk about is the initial opening line. I saw a hypothetical line before Ohio State actually beat Texas in the Cotton Bowl that favored Ohio State 8 points over Notre Dame, which I think is too high, and the line is out, and it opened at 9.5, which I think is insanely too high. Now, maybe Ohio State proves to be a bad matchup for the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. Who knows? And this is definitely eye candy for a lot of people in Vegas. They know what they're doing. If I were to run a sports book, though, I might have the line a little bit lower. I think this line is insanely high. I've been giving Notre Dame their flowers all season long. I've been telling people, watch out for this Fighting Irish team. They are going to be dangerous in the college football playoff, and I got that side of the bracket perfectly right, even dating all the way back. I thought Notre Dame would make the national championship because no one had been talking about them. Everyone's counting them out. They look at that Northern Illinois loss and say, you're not a real contender. They got a real shot, man. This is going to be a battle. It's going to be a 4-quarter fight. I can't wait to break this one down later this week, and we'll talk about some of the other things surrounding college football and the national championship game here in the coming weeks. Probably going to have 2, 3, if not 4 videos out for you this week, including my breakdown, my preview, my prediction for the national championship game. I can't wait for it, man. This is going to be so much fun. That's going to do it for this video. Yes, it will actually do it for this video. Thanks for sticking with me for the, 37 minutes that I happened to talk here. I really do appreciate all of you guys for watching, for tuning in. If you like this video, hit the subscribe button, do anything else you can to help support the channel. And with all that being said, remember to play hard but tailgate harder. Be on the lookout for some videos later on this week. Have a good rest of your weekend, and we'll see you soon. Goodbye.